A customer recently asked me about a scenario where you have 2 or 3 endpoints that are often used together by a client. So let's imagine maybe the client is a mobile application and it requests users and to-dos and posts. We have these 3 endpoints here, and what you might find more efficient is for the client just to make one request to the backend, and the backend does the job of aggregating that information. In Zooplo, we call that orchestration. I'm going to show you how to do it now. So here we have 3 endpoints, V1 users, V1 to-dos, and V1 posts. These are all mapped together. The posts have a user ID and the to-dos have a user ID. So we can actually aggregate them quite easily. And that's what the client would theoretically do in this case. It's just coming from this backend here called JSON placeholder, which is a demo API we use all the time. And what I'm going to do is add a new endpoint here. Let's call it get all things /v1. I'm just going to call it block. It's going to get a block of data. I don't know if that's a good name or not for you. And instead of doing a URL forward or URL rewrite, we're going to do a function. And I'm going to open this up. I'm going to create a new module. We're going to call that module block. And in just a couple of seconds, that will create a new file and a new module that we can use as the back end for this code. Now I'm going to write some code. I'm going to write all the code by hand for you. First thing we're going to do is create an async function, fetch JSON. And because we want to run these 3 requests that we're going to aggregate, we actually want to run them in parallel for maximum performance. We don't want to serialize the requests. So that's going to take a URL of type string, and we're going to go const response equals await fetch URL. And then we will return await response.json. In a fuller implementation, we'd probably check that that is actually valid JSON, but that's going to be fine for now. The next thing we're going to do in here is actually start to make those calls. So we're going to create an array, const users, posts, and to-dos equals await promise.all. So that will now execute these functions in parallel. That's what we want to do for the maximum performance. So we're going to say fetch JSON, and we're going to put a URL in there in a second. We're going to do that 3 times. And if you remember the back end for this, it's available here. Let's go and grab that, move back over here. I'm going to paste that in, paste that in, paste that in. In this case, we want posts, and in this case, we want to-dos. So at this point in the code, if all went well, we have users, posts, and to-dos as hydrated objects that contain all the data that we want. And so now what we're going to do is combine them with a simple function. Const combine equals users.map. We'll use u for user, and that's going to return an object that has the user itself expanded in there. Sorry, that'll be u. That has the user expanded in there. And then we're going to add a property called posts, which has the posts, but we're going to filter them. Where p.userid equals u.id, so the user ID there. And then we're going to have, let's see, to-dos is to-dos.filter. t.userid equals u.id. And then we're going to return that combined data. I'm going to click save, and we should actually be done with some simple, straightforward, but performant orchestration in Zooplo. So if I hit V1 users here, you'll see I get a list of just users back, no posts, no to-dos, just a list of users. But if I now go and hit this point, get all to things, you'll see we get users, we get the posts for each user, and to-dos. Now you probably have a more efficient way of loading and parsing this data, but hopefully this video gives you the idea of how it works.